While I will admit, it's not entirely unpleasant seeing you again.
It's been so long since I had a halfway decent series to talk about, whether sequentially or cinematically, it occurs to me many of you may actually be unaware of my long-abiding love for Daredevil. He's my favorite comic hero by 100 miles and far and away Marvel's most consistently superb series. Look, I get a blind superhero's a tougher sell than canned vomit to some people. It's hard to suspend disbelief when your protagonist can be defeated by leaving a plunger in his toilet. Yet from Stan Lee to Frank Miller, Gene Colan to Lee Weeks, a panoply of profoundly talented human beings have carved career-defining work out of the rough-hewn hornhead. Indeed, nothing explains the importance of this character in comic like the fact that you can comb over every great Batman creative team of the past 5 decades, and without almost a single exception, each and every one got there by penning a paradigm-shattering run of Daredevil first. So while some were surprised at how utterly excellent the 2015 Daredevil Netflix show decided to be to the true man without fear faithful, it was about as surprising as a terrorist with a hyphenated name. Anyone who watched my Enter Daredevil video knows this comic has always been an ageless agglomeration of film noir, crime fighting, and courtroom drama, and remains among the best-kept secrets in superhero comics. Accurately adapted to the screen, Daredevil was destined to do the Dark Knight shtick even better than Batman. And from the tone, to the film noir photography, to the profusion of deep red backdrops and dark black silhouettes, let's just say Matt Reeves, the Batman, copied more than a few lines of Matt Murdock's math homework. The show's cancellation was a Greek tragedy, and I still show up at his doorstep and kick Bob Iger in the ear every year to mark the occasion. But born again, I trust Disney to make a Daredevil TV show about as much as I trust Disney to make a Daredevil TV show. And yet, after all the internecine struggles, after an abortive attempt at a swashbuckling yellow-clad reboot, after She-Mail made Murdock doff his shoes and do the cuck walk, somehow, inexplicably, it actually, sorta, kinda looks like an actual Daredevil show.
A mayor serves his city. I can see you're not entirely convinced.
I was raised to believe in grace. I was also raised to believe in retribution.
But will it actually be good? Your guess is as good as Gilbert Gottfried's corpse. Judging from the trailer, it does have all the hallmarks. Moping, mood lighting, and most importantly, Matt, Foggy, and Karen. If I may pause for a fare thee well. The triumvirate of Matt Murdock, Karen Page, and Foggy Nelson were, and remain, the beating, if occasionally myocarditis-afflicted heart of the original Daredevil series. On celluloid or the sequential page, period. Postmenopausal period, even. Even in the 2003 Daredevil film, a movie with more issues than TV Guide, every time Jon Favreau's Foggy, Ben Affleck's Matt Murdock, or yes, even future Grey's Anatomy star Ellen Pompeo as Karen, who was carved out of the film until the superior director's cut, if you can believe it, lit up the screen, the personal stakes, not to mention requisite levity of this three-person dynamic, elevated an otherwise mediocre movie from languorous to marginally watchable.
Your ears must have been burning.
Why?
This just came by messenger. It's your invitation to the black and white ball at the Grand. +1.
+1? All right.
Coffee?
No. No, thank you.
I'd love a cup, Karen, thank you.
In the comics, from the halcyon 60s and smilin' Stan Lee to the Frank Millified dour devil of the 1980s, replete with divorcee Foggy and crackhead Karen, the Byronic Triforce of Murdock, Page, and Nelson were a narrative dynamo. And of all the things the 2015 Netflix series stuck the landing on, the Karen-Foggy-Matt dynamic was expertly executed and drove Daredevil from exposition to denouement.
So what? You're just a couple of good Samaritans? Today's just my lucky day?
I bribed the desk sergeant with a box of cigars for his mom.
Our practice is relatively young, Miss Page, and we are aggressively pursuing new clientele. You gotta stop giving Beth cigars.
She likes to smoke, man. It's a free country.
How long have you been practicing law?
What time is it?
It's 12:22 a.m.
About 7 hours.
Which made the backstab all the bigger when earliest reports of this show imparted the unwelcome knowledge that they plan to have all three put down like Patton Oswalt's wife. Couple that with an early leaked pitch alleging the show would be lighter fare, inspired by the Mark Waid run, and one can only assume roughly as unfunny as Patton Oswalt. Look, there's nothing innately wrong with yellow Daredevil on the page. It was designed by the legendary Bill Everett, rendered in dizzying detail by the great Wally Wood, and even later reinterpretations such as Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb's Daredevil Yellow prove there's nothing inherently wrong with Daredevil wearing an outfit that actually looks like it was designed by a blind guy. The operative issue is Mark Waid's Daredevil reads like it was written by a blind guy, and basing an insultingly expensive series on the lowest selling Daredevil comics of the modern era is the soundest investment since the Hawk Tua trollop launched her crypto coin. Who knew the fellatio chick could blow that much of your money? Point being, their return is more welcome than barbecue sauce on a spare rib. Though that isn't to say there isn't also a few things that are suspicious by their absence. Most pointedly, Father Latham, Mother Maggie, and any and all Catholic imagery. Look, we get this is Disney, a company whose entire conception of religion is bishops move diagonally. But this is not an optional element of Daredevil doctrine, folks. Half of Matt's motivation is driven by the fact that he's a devout and appropriately guilt-ravaged papist. And from Born Again to Guardian Devil, dogmatic symbolism and skull-cavingly Christian themes abound in all the most celebrated stories in Hornhead's retinue. So the fact that at least in this trailer, they're largely absent is more conspicuous than Rachel Maddow's 5 o'clock shadow. But wait a minute. If it's called Born Again, but we already adapted the Born Again storyline in season 3 of the Netflix series, then whose garden are we pissing in here exactly? Well, luckily you tripped and fell into the most autismally obsessed Daredevil fan on all of YouTube, and so almost immediately I identified what it appears to be an adaptation of. From talk of Daredevil going too far to the appearance of White Tiger, Muse, and Mayor Kingpin, this appears to be an adaptation of the 2015 Charles Soule Ron Garney run on Daredevil, albeit sans sidekick Blind Spot, who remains an improbably underrated and underutilized character. For a full breakdown on the many merits of that particular comic, check out my Razor vs. Comics breakdown of all new Daredevil #1. Vincent D'Onofrio returns, sans stupidity and oversized Hawaiian shirt as Mayor Kingpin. Wilson Bethel's back as Bullseye. Now, there's some scuttlebutt Elodie Young is no longer appearing as Elektra, which, if true, ought to be a capital offense. Miss Young was given the thankless task of repairing the damage done by the 2003 film and its Elektra spinoff, and despite being handed dialogue in Defenders that'd be laughed out of an 80s anime dub, the woman nailed it, particularly in her final scene with the titular hero. Just because Matt's too blind to know the difference doesn't mean we won't. Consider that before recasting. But in the plus column, Ton Bernthal's Punisher is back. In the minus column, so's his showrunner.
Should stay to your home, Bill. Bill, let's go!
While initial assessments were more generous than Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas morning, in the intervening years, the Punisher Netflix series has aged like Madonna's neck, a ponderous, punishment-deficient, non-vigilante incarnation of Frank Castle that may as well have been rechristened Mr. Marine, unctuously exchanging street-level kickassery with a side of superhero for desultory deep state intrigue offered up by the most insufferable Indian, H-1B American slurpee-slinging girl boss ever burned to a frame of film. And the fact that the show's director is still getting work on the infinitely more entertaining Daredevil franchise is an immortal indictment of the ongoing Tinseltown talent deficit. I wouldn't let this douche direct traffic after Punisher Season 2. So let's all hope that open-air abortion was Jeff Loeb's idea and cross our eyes, fingers, toes, and teeth that this'll be buttloads better than his last at-bat, because Daredevil was a damn fine show. 3 sensational seasons and half of that Limberdick Defenders nonsense that remains more than worth your viewership nearly a decade after it dropped. For more on that subject, watch my full and in-depth reviews of all 3 seasons while keeping an eagle-eyed lookout for the follow-up when Daredevil Born Again arrives in March, and God willing, it won't be as disabled as its hero. But I do sympathize. I myself was recently diagnosed with color blindness, and let me tell you, it came completely out of the yellow. I'm Razor Fist. Godspeed.
Morning.